Today from the global lane, an abrupt end to the Vietnam summit. Can Trump and Kim ever reach a deal to denuclearize? President Trump sends Jared Kushner to the Middle East. What's in the peace deal? And which Arab leader is trying to sabotage it? Conservative assaulted for exercising free speech rights at Berkeley. Where's the perpetrator? And I'll drive it home. Freedom from nukes on the Korean Peninsula or freedom for eternity? And it's all right here, right now from the global lane. In Vietnam, an abrupt conclusion to President Trump's second historic summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The two warmly greeted each other in Hanoi, then they got down to business. But Trump walked out early.
Sometimes you have to walk, and this was just one of those times.
CBN News Asia correspondent Lucille Toulousan joins us with more from Hanoi, where she covered the summit and she attended Trump's press conference. So, Lucille, why did Trump walk out early?
Well, President Trump did not see the part of the deal that Chairman Kim should be accomplishing or doing. He did not see him ready to give up all the nuclear weapon programs. He was unprepared. And they said that it was not the timing. It was not the right timing for a deal to be signed because Chairman Kim only chose those nuclear sites that he was willing to give up.
Well, responding to a reporter's question, I know Kim Jong-un reaffirmed his commitment to denuclearize, but he said he wouldn't have come to Vietnam unless he intended to do so. So it seems two sides are still kind of miles apart here, Lucille. Trump says denuclearize, then we'll lift the sanctions. Kim says lift them, then we will denuclearize. So what was your impression? Can they reach an agreement eventually?
I think it's a work in progress. And, you know, the positive thing here is that both of them are not fighting and they are building up a relationship, a good one at that. And I think that is a very optimistic outcome from this summit. And as President Trump said, he is pleased that Chairman Kim also promised to stop missile testing and that the U.S. is welcome to inspect their nuclear sites.
Human rights, I know a big part of that, of course, is religious freedom. Trump seemed a bit evasive on that. Kim ignored a question about it. So was human rights discussed?
Human rights were not discussed. I think the summit focused on denuclearization, but this can all lead to more religious freedom and the issue on human rights being solved if North Korea will completely denuclearize.
I know again this year, Open Doors said North Korea tops their list of the world's worst persecutors of Christians. You've met with a lot of Christians who have defected. What have you learned from them? What's happening to followers of Jesus in North Korea?
Well, I interviewed some of the North defectors, and you know, most of them really experienced hardship, especially their families who were left behind. You know, they were brought to detention centers, and they never saw them again or never heard of them again.
So how was this one in Vietnam different than the Singapore summit?
Well, in the Singapore summit, I believe that there was more excitement and hopes were high. This second summit only proved that it showed that, you know, a relationship between North Korea and the United States is building up. It's developing. And as Secretary Pompeo also said, you know, they know each other better. The teams from, you know, both parts, North Korea and the United States, they know their limitations, they understand one another, and hopefully they will work together to iron out differences and the challenges ahead, and then achieve, you know, what the world wants, and that's the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit cbn.com. The I wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Hello, I'm Terry Nielsen. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has just wrapped up his trip to the Middle East in hopes of solidifying support for a new U.S. peace plan.
For the last 70 years, the unifying principle of the region has been unifying against Israel. But now what we're seeing in this region is that a lot of the unifying principles are the leaders' love of their people and the leaders' desire for their people to live a better life.
The president is expected to unveil the plan after elections in Israel this spring. Well, joining us here in studio with more is Jonathan Schanzer. He's Senior Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
So we've seen some diplomacy here between the Saudi Arabians, also Gulf states, UAE, right? Bahrain, Qatar. What's going on?
Well, it's interesting that really the common foe that the Arabs and the Israelis have is Iran. And the fear of Iran, the anger at Iranian terrorism and destabilization across the Middle East, this has brought the Arabs and Israel together. And so we're at a place right now where Jared Kushner, Jason Greenblatt, the Donald Trump administration may be able to utilize the Arab states for the first time in trying to bring the Palestinians to the negotiating table. They may have a more positive role to play because of this shared antipathy toward the Iranians.
Well, they're being tight-lipped about this peace plan. I don't think it's all completely formulated yet. They're still adding to it, I'm sure. What do you think's in it?
You know, it's funny, I've had the opportunity to talk with some of the folks at the White House about this. It is an incredibly well-guarded secret. They don't share any of the specifics, not privately, not publicly. It's really remarkable. There are a lot of people who say that this is like a Seinfeld episode. It's a show about nothing. And then there are other people who say, well, you know, it's going to be terrific. We just need to wait for this thing to be trotted out. My understanding is that it is going to be probably more generous to the Israelis than previous peace plans that have offered the Palestinians 90 or 95% of the West Bank. It'll probably be much less than that this time around. I think there's going to be a lot of economic inducements for the Palestinians. They're going to try to bring the Palestinians along economically before giving them a lot of those political benefits that they've been looking for.
Little carrot and stick approach here.
I think that's right.
I think. Now, some people have said that the Saudis, part of this proposal is to allow the Saudis to have control over parts of the Temple Mount and the Al-Aqsa Mosque and so forth. And you know, as I do, I've been covering this for many years now. Jerusalem is a sticking point.
It absolutely will be. I think that it's probably a non-starter for the Saudis to have control. You have to remember the Jordanians have long laid claim to Jerusalem, that even after the Israelis reclaimed Jerusalem after the 1967 war, they still allowed the religious authorities in Jordan to continue to administer the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I expect that to continue, given the fact that there's already a peace plan, or actually a peace agreement, rather, between the Jordanians and the Israelis. I think the Israelis would be loath to disrupt that in any way.
Now, Mahmoud Abbas is saying, look, we really need an international conference here. Forget what Trump is doing. Almost seems like he's trying to sabotage whatever Jared Kushner and Trump are trying to pull off here.
He absolutely is. This is a guy, you have to remember, he's now, I think it's 14 years into a 4-year term. He's getting up there in age. He won't name a vice president. He wants to control the entire process, and his people are very angry at the White House. Of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that we moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem last year. We've been defunding the Palestinians because of their support for terrorism. So there is antipathy between this Palestinian Authority and the White House. I don't expect these guys to cooperate, and I expect them to be the folks that say no matter what is trotted out by the White House, and I think the Israelis are probably banking on that.
Not to mention Hamas. What do you do about them in Gaza?
Well, that's actually an interesting thing. That's come up a number of times with my conversations with folks in the White House about this. They continue to be vexed by this problem. Of course, there are effectively 2 Palestinian entities right now, one in the Gaza Strip controlled by Hamas, the other one in the West Bank controlled by Mahmoud Abbas. These 2 sides are at war. They have been at war with one another since 2007. And so any deal that is going to be struck will only encompass the West Bank. It's not like Hamas is going to come to the table and end all of its claims. That's really not in the cards. So we're not going to have a final status negotiation no matter what happens.
And there can't be peace in the Middle East, of course, until you resolve the Syria conflict. Do you see that coming to an end? We see that Trump wants to withdraw American troops there. How will that affect the Kurds and the Christians in northern Syria?
This is going to be, I think, a topic of some pretty heated debate in Washington. It's already heating up. Yeah, absolutely. Look, what we've done is we've defeated the battle, or we've defeated the Islamic State. That battle is over. But the problem is that the Islamic Republic of Iran is now trying to muscle in. And what they're trying to do is to establish a land bridge from western Iran through Iraq, through Syria, to Lebanon, to the Mediterranean. And the goal is to establish hegemony across the Middle East. This is bad news for the Israelis. It's bad news for Christians. It's bad news for minorities across the region, because the Iranians are not thinking about equal rights for these peoples. They're thinking about domination. They are, of course, a minority within the Islamic world. Shiites are 20%, and they really want to oppress the majority. And right now, if we get out of the way, we are going to pave the way for Iran to come in. And that is really ill-advised. It's one of the reasons why this debate is heating up in D.C.
How about Turkey coming in the north? I know the Kurds have told us they're very concerned about that.
And the Kurds have good reason to be concerned. The Turks are very aggressive. The Turks, by the way, are responsible for allowing ISIS to come into Syria in the first place. They left their border wide open at the beginning of this conflict, thinking that jihadists could somehow solve their problem with Bashar al-Assad. Well, fast forward to where we are today, and they've created a huge mess. The Kurds were among the only ones who were fighting on behalf of the United States, on behalf of the West. They did a terrific job in neutralizing the Islamic State. We're going to thank them by potentially throwing them to the wolves and allowing the Turks to go in and perhaps even slaughter some in northern Syria. So again, a lot of concern right now about possible Trump administration moves with regard to an evacuation from Syria. I think we need to be there and to demonstrate to allies and enemies alike that we mean to maintain stability and to keep things calm in that part of the world.
I want to just shift a little bit to what's going on in Congress. We see 2 openly hostile, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic members of Congress now, at least 2. And one way it has become policy now is the whole BDS movement. There's some suggestion that there are ties to terrorism. That's some of these leaders of the BDS movement. What can you tell us about
Absolutely.
that?
My organization, FTD, we've done some research into BDS. We've actually found that some of the groups have Hamas, let's say, cheerleaders at minimum, or in some cases, folks that have actually done fundraising for Hamas in the past. We've also seen organizations that have ties to the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. So these groups that are out there saying that they're doing this for social justice, this boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, it's not really social justice. You know that there is an ulterior motive. I think ultimately they would like to do harm to the Jewish state.
So it's all designed to weaken Israel.
That's right.
Jonathan Schanzer, thank you for being with us. God bless you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Parents, the Superbook Bible App is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible App has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible App, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
You may have seen this shocking video that's gone viral on social media. It's of a conservative student with the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform Organization. He's getting assaulted and punched in the face by a leftist at the University of California, Berkeley. It's another example of how conservatives are getting beaten to a pulp and their voices silenced simply for exercising their free speech rights on some American college campuses. Well, joining us with more is the victim of that assault, Campus Reform Field Rep Hayden Williams. So, Hayden, first, I've got to ask you, how are you doing? It looks like you're beaten pretty badly there.
Yeah, I took a pretty hard punch, and honestly, I'm still recovering from it, as you can tell. I've got some ringing in my ears and throbbing headaches, and you know, it's just my main concern right now is making sure we're back in good health and all that.
Well, explain to us what happened. What were you doing when this assault occurred?
Sure. So as you said, I'm a field representative for the Leadership Institute, and it's my job to help conservative students on various campuses across California organize events and recruit new members. And last Tuesday, some students at Berkeley that I know had invited me to help them table, and they wanted to demonstrate that this recent hate crime hoax was an egregious thing to happen. And so we made some signs that said, hate crime hoaxes hurt real victims. And I think it was that sign towards the end of the day that really triggered a couple people on campus, and they came up to us. They were very belligerent, and I knew it was a bad situation, so I started recording. And right when I did that, that didn't de-escalate the situation. In fact, they got more aggressive and violent after that.
So you were talking about hate crimes, and then you became a victim of one. What did you say that angered them so much?
So it was, I think it was the sign that hate crime hoaxes hurt real victims. As I said, that's the one they kept pointing at and saying that we were promoting violence. And I just simply said, no, we're not, against whom? And that's when things got really out of control.
So you're just exercising your free speech right, talking about Jussie Smollett and that situation.
Yeah, and the situation was really scary, to be honest. And you know, I'm trained here at the Leadership Institute to, if anything like this happens, to immediately begin recording. And so my training kicked in, and I did that. And fortunately, no students that I was working with were attacked. You know, if it had to be anybody, I'm glad it was me. But this could have been a lot worse, you know.
Well, it shouldn't be anybody, but how did university administrators and the police respond?
So the police are still investigating, and you know, I have confidence that they'll find the suspect. And as far as the administration goes, I'm kind of disappointed. They come out and denounced it, but I think it was because they realized what kind of a PR nightmare this might be for them. And moreover, they kind of harbor this culture that is intolerant towards conservative principles.
Now, they're not advocating violence, but they don't speak out against the violence or this culture of going after conservative speech, or?
Well, they do in word, but in deed, they've really not lived up to that.
Well, now, did the police find this gentleman? Or I call him a gentleman, but I guess he wasn't, the way he handled you.
Yeah, use that term loosely.
Yeah.
So I don't know, to be honest with you. You know, they're still investigating, so they want to make sure due process is followed, and I completely understand that as a constitutionalist conservative.
Hayden, so, I saw one report on the Campus Reform website that says that they've identified this individual and there's a felony warrant out for his arrest.
Yeah. So that's hopefully, you know, some information that will help the case and lead to an arrest. But you know, I'm just basically taking it step by step. And as I said, you know, right now I'm just focused on recovery, and then the next step, I think, is making sure that this person gets arrested.
Well, I was going to ask you, if and when they do arrest this individual, are you going to press charges, file a lawsuit? What are you going to do?
Well, I'm kind of just leaving my options open right now. You know, I'm kind of still dizzy from the whole thing, you know, a week out. So, you know, I'll leave my options open, but as I said, you know, just kind of take it step by step. Okay,
what do you want our viewers to know about the daily risks to conservatives on American college campuses?
So I've been doing this job for a few months now, and going up and down California, this seems to be the disturbing trend, and it's only gotten worse in recent months and years. So, you know, that makes the mission of Leadership Institute and Campus Reform really necessary now more than ever. And you know, today, this time it was me. Tomorrow it could be you or your kids or your grandkids. So, you know, this is a real problem that we need to address as a country.
I think a lot of Americans are concerned about this, and so finally, what can they do about it?
Well, you know, we do amazing work here at Leadership Institute and campusreform.org. So that's our whole mission, is dedicating to exposing liberal bias and abuse and helping young conservative students, you know, get the training they need to be effective, you know, in their activism.
Okay, Hayden Williams of Leadership Institute's Campus Reform. Be careful out there, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Nielsen. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Donald Trump's second historic summit meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, this one in Hanoi, was all about freedom and economic opportunity.
I think that your country has tremendous economic potential, unbelievable, unlimited. And I think that you will have a tremendous future with your country, a great leader. And I look forward to watching it happen and helping it to happen. And we will help it to happen.
President Trump maintains if Kim would just shut down his nuclear and missile testing programs for good, then all would be safe and prosperous on the Korean Peninsula. The region and the USA would be free from the nuclear threat. But, Mr. President, President Trump, you and Kim may be able to free the Korean Peninsula of nuclear weapons, but what good would that be if the North Korean people aren't also freed from tyranny and religious persecution? Christians there need to be liberated from the threat of arrest and imprisonment, even death, simply for following Jesus. Currently, all North Koreans are forced to follow the state religion of Juche, which is really the worship of the country's leaders as deities. North Korean defector J.M. became a Christian in China, but the Chinese government eventually sent him back to North Korea, where he was imprisoned. He says life in the North Korean prison system was brutal. Guards regularly beat, tortured, and even starved Christians to death.
During a questioning, North Korean investigators didn't tell us not to believe in Jesus. They rather said Christians would never change their beliefs even if they faced death. So they were saying, like, we must be killed.
Over the years here at CBN News, we've shared many stories from North Korean Christian defectors. Open Doors lists North Korea as the world's top persecutor of Christians. At least 30,000 out of maybe as many as 300,000 Christians in the Hermit Kingdom are imprisoned. That's at least 10%, and it's probably closer to 20 or 25%. No one knows for sure. So, Mr. President and Secretary of State Pompeo, the Christians of North Korea are depending on you to make religious rights a priority in your talks with Kim Jong-un. And if you don't, then you are only fighting for temporal freedom. You may eventually free the Korean Peninsula from the nuclear threat, but North Koreans still need the opportunity to be free. Free to practice their faith openly, without government interference and threat of death. Please, please work harder to provide them with the freedom to choose and follow Christ. And that is for eternity. And that is it today from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.